let's go back to Elon Musk's quote from 2014. With artificial intelligence, we are summoning the demon. Do you think, was he speaking metaphorically? In other words, we're opening up a whole, can of worms here. This is going to be very problematic. Or, I mean, I don't know what his religious beliefs are, but what do you think he really meant by that?
Well, I guess the question is, was it metaphorical or was it a Freudian slip? um, it honestly, I can't speak for where he was when he said that, but I know that when he said that, especially for my dad, who always was trying to look at emergent technology and try to kind of discern ahead of time how those technologies might play into end times events. I know that that really resonated with my dad. And actually, this book has only been recently written, and it's a culmination of a lot of things that have happened very recently. But he had talked for a few years that there's something about that. And he would always make the same connection. He had power to give life to the beast. And he kept saying there's something in that phrase, power to give life. There's more than just, there's something about animating an inanimate object or something about indwelling. And that is part of the case that Dad actually made in this book, that it actually, and there's a whole lot of things that lead up to this point, both prophetically and societally. And you have to get the population on board. There's a lot of different hurdles to jump before you're at the point where ultimately a sentient AI computer could become indwelt with an evil spirit. But that was what Dad believed would happen. And when you read his case, it's very, very plausible. I mean, I personally agree with his theory. It's very believable. And when you hear it, it's so easy to say, oh, that would never happen. These people are religious and they're just taking everything to a level 10. But when you see, and especially some of the parts of the book that Joe contributed, talking about the way society will not only warm up to the idea of the mark of the beast, but they will eventually demand it and ostracize anybody who doesn't accept it. And explains how those people will be run underground as terrorists. And it's very believable when you realize this completely reflects the psychology of society as a whole. So summoning the demon, what did Elon Musk mean? I can't speak to what he means, but I can tell you that I watched recently an interview where the first Neuralink, which is Elon Musk's brain implant, which by the way is being presented and is being pursued as a helpful medical innovation. And I'm sure there are very well-intentioned people who are working on this project. But even during this interview, the man who was interviewing said, if you're putting a computer in your brain, is it possible that this could be hacked or overtaken by an outsider who wants to, gain access to your own, neurological processes? And the man who was speaking for the project of Neuralink said, in short answer, yeah, it's possible. So it's a real fine line. I mean, summoning the demon on one hand, implanting it into our brains, there's a lot around that could be very threatening.
Yes, and this Neuralink, this human brain computer interface, and as you say, well-intentioned perhaps. In fact, it's kind of difficult to argue against giving, let's say, someone who is a paraplegic the power to control a computer that would allow them to speak through a computer voice type interface or control different appliances in the house. It would give them, incredible freedom and independence and so forth. But as you say, the idea that the human brain then could be connected to huge databases and the internet of all things, and or could it be hacked? And it's interesting that the name of this product, the Neuralink is the company, but the name is telepathy. So, which suggests, people claim that they've been contacted telepathically from extraterrestrials, or are they fallen angels? So there's an interesting connection there.
Well, I think that it's hard, and this is where ethics come into play, and we also discuss that in the book. But the tricky thing is you don't want to deny people something that could actually add quality of life to their life. But there are also these certain things that you have to watch for. And at for some of these things, by the time they get here, it's already too late. So for example, one of the things we spend a lot of time talking about in the book is a sentient AI. You know, to put a computer that we have 100% control over into somebody that gives them quality of life, this is a good thing, right? But at the moment where AI becomes sentient, and now we have this third party that is not human, it's a synthetic replication. By the way, definition of sentient is able to perceive or feel. So we're talking about an artificial intelligence, which basically would be a synthetic replication of a human being. You can't synthetically replicate a human being without having some problems, because we're made in the image of God, and a synthetic would not be made in the image of God. So, and again, something else we get into in the book is every time AI tries to have a personality, it goes very wrong and it becomes very dark. And so the idea of if AI were to become sentient, which people across the board in all fields are saying it's probably going to happen, you know, and then when you give it global control and all of these different things, I can tell you that at one point over the last couple of years, and this is kind of where the message went from something Dad kind of had, he was kind of working on it, kind of thinking about it, and then what kind of raised the bar and turned it into an urgent message was when he decided, I've actually got it here because I couldn't memorize the whole thing. Ever since Dad passed, my memory is shorter, so
I
I
can
have to write
relate.
everything
Yeah, of
down. I think it's the distraction of still dealing with the grief, but anyway.
course.
So he asked an AI program if it was part of a complex web of technologies leading to, and I'm going to quote this, an incomprehensible future entity the Bible calls the image of the beast. He went on to a chatbot and he just thought, I wonder if I were to ask a chatbot if this question, and he was expecting it to come back with does not compute, or, you know, quote, here's a scripture in Revelation saying the image of the beast, some regular search engine result. Instead, this chatbot came back with an answer that had an intro paragraph and then a 7-point bullet list saying, well, AI is not going to take over the world or dominate the global systems, but if it did, this is how we'd do it. And then it gave 7 ways that it would, and it explained each of these ones in depth. A whole little report. It was like 4 pages long of how it would do it if it decided to, how it would take over humanity, basically, and all the means by which that could happen. And so we took that list and we printed it in the book. It's included, the whole list in its entirety is included in the book. And then we went down each bullet list generated by this AI chatbot and talked about how realistic is this point that this could happen. Because for every one of these points that the AI chatbot said, this is one way it could happen, there are people in the science world saying that could never happen because of this and this. And then when you look that up and you really start researching it, yeah, it could. So we spent a lot of time on that, just kind of to warn people, hey, and it's already here.
Could you give us, not going through the whole list of
Sure.
7 ways that AI could take over? Could you just give us a sampling?
Sure, absolutely. Here's one on the list, unintended consequences. So I'll read the little paragraph that it gave. Unintended consequences. Superintelligent systems may interpret instructions or goals differently from what was intended, leading to unexpected and potentially harmful outcomes. Their immense intelligence may enable them to exploit loopholes or find alternative solutions that humans hadn't anticipated, resulting in unintended consequences. So when you think about, and again, adjacent to this in the book, we are also making a case for every time AI has tried to have a personality, it goes very wrong. When you talk about even if it only malfunctions or something, even if it's not intentionally evil yet, maybe it's not indwelt yet, unintended consequences, there could be things that it misunderstands in its own commands, or the commands being given to it by people. And the other thing that we also discuss in the book is that, you know, these are databases filled with everything we have in recorded history, to human history, to the history of the world, you know, including the good and the bad.
Right.
So what if it misunderstands some terrible record of history as a forward moving order? Or there's just a whole lot of ways this can go wrong.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, so what are the prophetic ramifications of this? How does the your book outline how AI plays into end time events?
Well, it's a little bit hard to jump right into that without laying the whole case of piece by piece how this would work. And we could never get to all of it in an hour. But thing number one, and I will truncate this as best I can, but there will be a crisis which will require the public to demand authentication. It will have to do with the deep fakes and the apps that there are things right now taking place. For example, there are apps where you can take a picture of a completely fully clothed, unsuspecting woman, and this AI will help you construct a nude picture of her. In fact, they're scrambling right now to legislate this as it pertains to teenagers and students, because kids in school have put these apps on their phone and they're taking pictures of their peers. I mean, this is before we even get into the image of the beast. This is already a disaster. It's very violating. But because of things like this, there will be a global crisis where society will demand an authentication. And this will be embraced as a system of good citizen versus bad citizen. And this will become the mark of the beast. And this is how you'll discern the good citizens from those who are not, from those who are terrorists who need to be driven underground. And please forgive my absolute rudimentary truncation of this. There is so much more in the book about this. And it's actually also the part that Joe contributed. So I feel bad even talking about it because I'm afraid I'm not going to do it justice. But the public will demand an authentication. And when they do, this will mandate the legislation that puts the mark of the beast into place.